Today, we are building an XXL outdoor project, and I am really excited to see if my invention works as I imagined. This is going to be a real challenge again, but before we get started, let me show you what I have planned. Just come along. Here we are in the garden. It's newly landscaped, and here is where a staircase will go. Not just any staircase, but with illuminated steps. This is how the lighting should look. Let's get started. For the staircase, I have already made a simple hand sketch. You can see it here. Not really professional, but completely sufficient for my purposes. Here we have the foundation that I showed you, and we will build the individual steps on it. We need to overcome a height of 160 centimeters, and the length will be 360 centimeters. I plan to make the individual steps with a tread of 36 and a height of 16 centimeters. Yes, if I haven't miscalculated, that should actually work. If you make a mistake in the planning, that would be fatal, of course, so it has to fit. Fingers crossed. I've already procured the material I need for the steps. Although the concrete is only half of it, I'll get the other half when the second round of concreting is done. The wood I need for the formwork, I had cut to the right dimensions at the hardware store. I do this often for larger projects because it saves a lot of time. And the few euros for the cut don't really matter here anymore. Luckily, I don't have to pay for it, and time is money, as you know. The formwork itself will not be a problem at all. These will be rectangular block steps. But the electronics that need to be installed, the recess for that will be a bit tricky. But I have already made a plan for that. You can see it here. So these are the two steps, and the red part is the LED strip that needs to be threaded through. This means we need 4 cutouts on each step. I plan to connect the individual steps later with an electrician, but for now, let's screw the formwork together. It goes relatively quickly. To save more working time, I will build the same formwork 3 times, by the way. I have a total of 10 steps, so I will use each formwork 3 times. Yes, it's worth getting the concrete mixer dirty for that. You always have a load of 300 kilograms of concrete that you process in one go. At least you make sure to clean the mixer afterwards. At first it doesn't sound like much, but you have to move all the material multiple times. If, like me, you usually work in an office all day, you'll definitely feel in the evening that you've accomplished something. I think many of you will be familiar with this. Be as it may, when you want to implement such projects, we shouldn't complain. Now, let's continue with the cutouts. We need inputs and 2 outputs at each block step. The recess is for the cable. I used a Forstner bit here, the same size as the conduit, and we can later pull the conduit through it. So far so good. Let's see how the pipe fits. It's right here, diameter 25 mm. I almost suspected that. It's a bit tight, so we need to do some rework. But no problem, that's just a tiny speck that needs to be removed. Let's sand it off quickly. 1,000, so now it fits perfectly. Very good. I'm done, that was no problem. But now it gets a bit more difficult. Now comes the real challenge with the formwork, namely the recess pan where the LED strip will go. For that, I made another sketch. This is supposed to look like this. This here will be the recess, and on top, a rail with the LED strip will be inserted. I've already gotten the aluminum profiles. I can link a budget-friendly shop in the video description below. You can get all kinds of profiles you can imagine at a good price. I decided on these aluminum profiles with a cover, and now we need to build a recess for them. I will definitely build the recess out of Styrodor, and we will cut it to size on the table saw. Styrodor is ideal for formwork construction because it is stable and can be easily removed once it has been cast. And at this point, I would really be interested to know how you would have implemented such block steps with lighting, how you would have built the formwork. I really put a lot of thought into the planning beforehand, like how to lay the cables, how to implement the light gap, and the ideas with the electronics. And I think the idea isn't too bad, definitely has room for improvement, but I couldn't come up with anything better. But if you know something, have optimization suggestions, or would have approached it differently, write it in the comments. It helps you and also helps me. Unfortunately, it's just the way it is. You can't buy such block steps ready-made. If you want something like this, you have to make it yourself and accept the effort involved. Maybe this could be a pretty good business idea, so maybe I should even get it patented. Well, that's obviously a matter of taste, but I've never seen anything like this on the market. It might be interesting for the precast industry to offer something like this as prefabricated parts. There's definitely potential there. And if you have any suggestions for improvement, feel free to write them in the comments and we can have a discussion. I'll tell you a bit more about the costs later. That's quite interesting. I actually have an acquaintance who owns a construction company, and I asked him what it would cost to have a staircase like this built by a construction company. I was a bit taken aback, but we'll get to that later. This is the recess for the LED strip, quite a narrow affair. I added an extra millimeter everywhere, both in width and height, so that we have a bit of play in the concrete later. The recess for the light gap under the step will look like this. These are simply the measurements I mentioned to you earlier. This will be screwed in place like this. And here is the recess for the empty conduit. Now we just need to stick the recess for the LED strip down here. I use silicone for gluing, it works quite well. We'll glue it on here now. Then you need to make sure that it is nicely centered. And this is what the finished recess looks like. I think it's not too big of a problem. Before we can finish the formwork, we of course need a silicone joint as always. This time the silicone joint is even a bit more important because the tread pan should be nicely rounded at the step. And this time I will make a slightly larger joint than usual. I have the joint tool for that. And this time I will simply use a larger ball because the larger the ball, the larger the curve will definitely be. We will do that now as well. The applied wax makes it easy to remove the excess material. What remains is a clean silicone joint. A release agent is also applied to the surface so that the concrete can be easily removed later without any problems. But it's always the same. I've explained it to you 1,000 times already. There's no need to go into more detail. So folks, we're almost done. Now we just need to install the recess and then we can start pouring the concrete. In the recess, the pipes will go in now. We simply and carefully insert it into the designated recess like this. And then we proceed to securely attach the corresponding part to the formwork structure. At the top edge, it needs to be flush, and then comes the foam. All right, here we go. With the amount of concrete, I even dug out my force mixer again because you have to mix all of this by hand. It drives you crazy. For my stair project, I need about a ton of concrete. I use a ready-mix concrete from the hardware store. It's just convenient and you get consistent quality. And I will refine the concrete here. I showed you in my last video how to enhance such ready mixes. Microsilica, a bit of additional cement, a plasticizer and a sealing agent are simply added. The addition of microsilica makes the concrete denser, more load-bearing and also harder. With the sealing agent, it becomes water impermeable and the water absorption is greatly reduced. And plasticizer, that's standard. This makes the concrete easier to work with, more flowable and easier to compact. If you're interested in the topic, just check out my last video where I explained everything in detail. At this point, I can also tell you a bit about the cost calculation. I mentioned earlier that I have an acquaintance who has a construction company, and I sometimes ask him just for fun with larger projects what it would cost if he were to implement it with his company. He laughed at first and said, "You know, Frank, when you come it costs double the flat rate." Of course, just kidding. He listened to the plan carefully and then roughly calculated what he would need to charge and thoughtfully considered all the details. And the amount came to between 6,500 and 7,000 euros for the stairs. That is for the material, for the custom manufacturing of the steps, and for the overall installation of the stairs. Yes, I was a bit surprised at first. I originally assumed a lower price. I thought it would be somewhere between 3,000 to 4,000 euros. But yes, as I said, that's a lot of work time again. You have to factor all of that in. What would you have estimated for that? Did he also say that you would have estimated 6,500 to 7 right away? Or would you have said it lower? I would really be interested to know what your opinion on this is. As I said, you simply can't buy something like this. This is an individual design project. And if you want something like this, you have to pay the prices. Or by doing it yourself, you can save a lot of money. That is certainly the case. Now, there will be a bunch of you again who say yes, but Frank, as always, you have to account for your own labor time as well. No, I say you can't implement it like that here because very few people are self-employed and they can't earn money at home in their free time. And if you stand here in your free time and build something, then you'll still have the money in your pocket at the end of the month. What one would have otherwise spent is my opinion, but everyone can have their own opinion on that. Phew, folks, with all this work, I almost forgot the reinforcement bars. We still need to put those in as well. I need to open the bracket a bit more. Luckily, I noticed just in time. At this point, here are some details about the weight of the steps. That's quite interesting too. And you saw, I embedded a styrofoam core in the concrete to reduce weight. This brings us to around 90 to 95 kilograms per step. This is optimal, still manageable, and you don't struggle when laying them. Alright folks, that was indeed a lot of work, but for today I've poured exactly 300 kilos of concrete. Let me just show you numbers 1, 2 and 3. But before I can call it a day, I still have the absolute worst job to do, which is cleaning the mixer. Oh man, how I hate that job. Well, see you tomorrow for the formwork removal. At this point, I can also tell you a bit about the actual material costs for the project. They consist of the material for the formwork construction, empty conduit, concrete screed, the additives we mixed in, the reinforcement, and the LED rails. So I have now arrived at a total amount for the material of around 530 euros for all 10 steps. And I think given the size of the project, the price is absolutely manageable. I just compared it as well. For such corresponding prefabricated steps of this size made of concrete, the prices range from 30 to 70 euros. However, these are very simple block steps without any cutouts for LEDs. And I would say, therefore, the price is completely reasonable. I carried out the project over several weeks, pouring concrete whenever I had the time. And for 3 steps, you can estimate a working time of about 6 hours from formwork construction to stripping the forms. If you add the labor time on top of that, it would of course be another significant cost factor. But as I already mentioned, in my opinion, you can't apply this one-to-one as a private individual. For those who think that the statement is complete nonsense and always value their own work time in their free time particularly high, here's a small example for clarification. By that logic, it would theoretically be cheaper to go out to a restaurant for dinner every night instead of preparing the food yourself. Because if you count the time spent making the food and then washing up afterwards, you're also looking at about an hour. And with an hourly wage of 15 to 20 euros, it might be worth it to eat out every evening. So I think you understand what I mean, and if you think this way about leisure activities, then you have to think this way in all areas. That's why, in my opinion, the statement you often read here under YouTube videos is complete nonsense. Yeah, so the finished result looks pretty good, I would say. It can stay like that. I like it. What do you think? Nice. Now we just need to attach the aluminum profile for the LEDs. I've already cut it to the right length and we'll stick it into the recess now. For that, I use a construction adhesive with which you should definitely be able to hold bombs in place. There. Yeah, fits like a glove. We'll definitely fix it with a clamp until the glue hardens and then we're essentially done, I'd say. Yeah, absolutely, definitely. So far so good. At least now I know that my plan works. You have seen how to build a stair step and how you can save money by doing it yourself, and how it continues with the stairs you'll see in the second part. There I will show you how we build the stairs and most importantly how the finished stairs look. Yes, that's it for today. Thank you for watching. I hope it was interesting again, and hopefully we'll see each other soon for the second part. Until then, take care. Bye.